Here with Paul Brislen. Paul was the CEO of TUANZ, 2010 to 2014, Paul?
I'd have to check LinkedIn, but yes, yeah, it feels like 100 years ago, so that's probably about right. Yeah,
right. So those are the first years of the tens, as it were. Yeah.
Yes.
And you came in after Ernie Newman, long time CEO, and you must have been around the 25-year mark for TUANZ. We're now 35, of course.
Yes, yeah. Just after it, we had a lot of brochures and everything that all of the signage was still with the 25-year stuff. So just after that, yeah.
Cool. Well, let's get crack into something around that period, because like after the huge changes that had happened in the telco market in the 2000s, I mean, what was left for you to work on when you started at the beginning of the new decade?
Well, there's been nothing to do for the last 25 years, you know that. So, yeah, after Ernie's era, we had the Telco Act introduced in 2000, but by 2010, we had a whole new change coming on the market. 2006, we'd seen telecom finally separated. And two companies formed. By 2010, we had the start of the brave new world of fiber to the home. And this was where the Chorus project largely kicked off. And work had started. It was a 10-year project. The distant future of the year 2020 was the end goal. And we thought, well, that's so far away, we won't have to worry about that. It started a whole new revolution in terms of capability, capacity, and I spent a lot of time wandering around the traps, talking to people, explaining to them what fiber was, why it was important, and what sort of things you'd be able to do with it. And I'm still astonished that there were so many people who couldn't see the point in having ultra-fast broadband to the home. It seemed like, well, what are you going to do with it? I'll get my emails quicker, will I? That's hilarious. Yeah. And there's a lot of that going on. So yeah, it was a very interesting time. It was quite a different era, I think, to Ernie's era. Yeah.
And of course, we used to come across each other because at that point, I think I was at Chorus, and we would turn up at different events, sort of the other way around, talking about rural broadband and things like that.
Totally, I'd get you along to talk about what's going on in the Chorus world, and we've all moved around a couple of seats ever since. So, it is an industry that once you're in, it's very sticky. It's quite hard to get free of, I find.
Yeah, I was looking at something that you did run quite a large advocacy program at one stage around the Axe the Tax type thing. So where did that come from? Because that was quite a big one, and you got a lot of people together.
Yeah, that was probably, thinking back on my time at the helm, that was probably the big project that we ran. So for those who don't have long memories, this was when Chorus, as it had become, was expected to reduce its charges for wholesale service on the copper world because it was no longer able to assess how much it would cost from what they called a retail minus point of view. So because it didn't have a retail arm, there was no way you could work out what the retail price of a product was. In the old world, that's how we'd done things. The wholesale price was the retail price minus a margin. There you go, there's your wholesale price. Go out and sell your wholesale product. Instead, they would move to a cost-based model, which meant working out what Chorus's costs were, adding on a little margin, and then that was your wholesale price. And this was introduced in the 2010 legislation. It was going to be so huge a drop that Chorus was given 3 years to get ready for it. And then at the last moment, there was quite an outcry from the Chorus leadership team, yourself notwithstanding, to say, hold on a minute, we're going to be unable to complete the fiber build because of the loss of money. And the government said, well, that's terrible. We'll just defer the whole thing. And we said, well, actually, that's no, this has been a long time coming. You cannot defer that. The cost to the country works out to be about $600 million. They've agreed to build a fiber network. They've agreed to all the cost reduction model that was in place. Time to get on and do the job. And thankfully, by the end of the project, we had convinced most of the minor parties, because the Parliament was very much an MMP Parliament that year, convinced most of them to say, well, hold on, we're not going to change the rules at this stage of the game. And the whole thing was put on hold. It was a huge cross-industry project. We had Internet New Zealand, ourselves, Consumer NZ, most of the retail ISPs were on board, and it was a really big deal. It would have changed the way the fibre rollout would have eventuated, I suspect.
So we'll put that in the tick box for TUANZ. Another win for the consumer and the user in that respect.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I think it really showed our commitment to the users of New Zealand, because we were very much in favour of building a fibre network. I mean, it's incredible technology, and the last few years have demonstrated its worth time and time again. But at the same time, if you've suddenly got an extra $600 million to throw at a problem, well, we've got a lot of problems to solve. So let's have a look at rural broadband, or how are we going to extend the reach of the network? Let's just not hand it over to one company because they haven't got their numbers quite right. And in the end, the government of the day, the minister got Ernst & Young, I think, to do a big piece of work around costs and where Chorus could save money. And they found quite a big chunk of the $600 million down the back of a couch somewhere, and carried on with the project. And here we are today thinking, where to from here, right? What are we going to do next? It's fantastic.
Yeah. It's in the back of my rental car as I was driving around the country.
In that bag, the red bag.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, look, let's turn to TUANZ itself as an organisation. While you led it for those 4 years, I mean, what were the big challenges that faced you with TUANZ? I mean, after it had a very big 2 decades, there was quite a few external impacts on the organisation as well.
Well, it was, of course, the global financial crisis. And within minutes of arriving in the job, it turned out there was no money. And not just for TUANZ, but for most of the economy all the way around the world. And the flow-on effect of that was absolutely devastating. We had gone from being an organization that had staff, had offices, had a calendar of activity mapped out for the year ahead that involved events, numerous speaking opportunities, a conference, an awards dinner, and suddenly nobody had any money to sponsor it. And on top of that, a lot of the government departments, which in particular had supported us in terms of activity, said, well, we've got our budgets cut as well, so we've got no money to do anything. And I remember having a very awkward conversation with the board, because as you know, I'm a journalist by training. Maths is not our strong suit. And in the job interview, I had said to them, look, I can certainly talk about advocacy and about the communication side. I've got no experience whatsoever in running a business. And they said, oh, don't you worry about that. We're all business people. We'll help you with that. And when I said, look, I think we've got $1 million a year of income and sort of like $1.5 million of outgoings, is that not a problem? What are we going to do about that gap? And they said, I don't know. You're in charge. What are we going to do about the gap? And so that was very helpful. I learned quite rapidly about all the various options. We explored the world. We actually had a great opportunity to talk with Intug, the international telco.
Oh, yes. Yep.
And the people who were at a meeting all chipped in together and said, oh, you could try this model and you can try that. We have a family of sponsors. We do everything's off the back of government funding. We tried all kinds of things. And at the end of the day, the only thing we could do really was cut our cloth to match the incoming membership fees. So unfortunately, we had to close the office, let all the staff go, retrench back from the number of events that we had that really were costing us money to run. And until a sponsorship came along, we were pretty much just holding on tight, riding out the storm. It was. I always say that TUANZ years were like dog years. I might have been there for 4 or 5, but it felt like 10 or 15 because it was quite hard work. But as you know, it survived, and survived me as well as the financial crisis. And we are still kicking on stronger than ever at 35 years. It's tremendous to see. Yeah,
it is. So just what was your highlight then at your time at the helm of TUANZ?
I think it was moving the dial on that conversation around broadband away from it's just a mechanism for getting your email and surfing the net, to becoming the platform for the economic future of the country. And that was terribly exciting. We stopped talking about some of the issues that had been plaguing the industry for so very long. To borrow Simon Mutter's phrase, he said, instead of walking backwards, fending off regulation, how about we turn around and face the customers and start doing stuff that they like? Yeah. And I said, that's exactly what we need to hear. So we did. We started talking about all the things you can do with the technology, the capability, the opportunity for New Zealand, in terms of regional economic development, balancing some of those inequities, trying to make sure that everybody had access to properly world-class infrastructure at a decent price. And I think largely we've done quite well on that front. Certainly the uptake rate of fibre has been second to none. We've got a network that rolls out to, it's very nearly at 87% of the population. Australia is still sitting there on about 25, 30%. The UK is on 25%. They can't seem to break through that. They've done London and kind of abandoned the rest of the country. Yeah. We have got a nationwide network, and COVID came along, and as you know, the proof was in the pudding. I sat here, we had 7 adults in the house in lockdown in Auckland for however many weeks that was. And I was working from home. The kids were learning online and simulcasting, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, every episode streaming to my wife was working, my in-laws were here. It was a busy house. The broadband didn't skip a beat, not for a minute. And with a 1 gig connection, we didn't even have to think about it. It just delivered exactly what we needed. And I think the economic story of lockdown would have been quite different if we hadn't all been able to do that. Absolutely.
It's definitely been the decade of fibre, hasn't it?
It really.
Anything else you want to share with about your time before we finish up?
It was always great to get out and meet the members and find out just who's who in the zoo and what we're all up to. I was quite surprised to find a number of companies were sponsors of various things and involved in TUANZ very heavily. But the CEOs didn't really seem to know that they were members of the organization, because it was always the technical people who had signed up and were engaged. And I think that strength of the user base there is fantastic, and is largely why we started talking back then about, should it be the telco users or are we tech users? Is it a digital organization? And you've carried that on, and I see on the banner behind you the Tech Users Association, which is exactly the move it needed to be. So it has the roots started a long time ago, but it's absolutely the right move. And I think, long life, another 35 years, we'll see just what's going on then. It'll be fascinating.
Well, you and I might not see it, but someone will see it, yeah.
You never know.
That's right. Hey, well, thank you so much. We've been talking to Paul Brislen. He was the CEO of TUANZ from 2010 to 2014. So thanks very much.